America is under attack. Not from a foreign adversary, as you might expect, and America has plenty of enemies, Iran, Syria, Iraq, Libya. But no, America is under attack by homegrown terrorists. And if you thought, well, it's okay, because the FBI will be across it, or the Central Intelligence Agency will be coordinating with Nah, the attack is from within. Not just from within the borders of the nation, but from within the very seat of government itself. The American people are under attack from the White House and from the office of the president, who controls all branches of government and the Supreme Court. And out of 330 million Americans, 244 million were eligible to vote. But Trump only got 77 million votes. Do you see where this is heading? This man, who claims to be doing the work of the people, only won the presidency by a margin of 1.47 percentage points, and as we know, only 155 million people's votes were even counted. Voter turnout nationally in 2024 was just 63.9%. That's below the 66.6% voter turnout recorded in 2020. So if only 63% of voters voted, and Trump only got 49% of those, how is that a mandate to deconstruct the republic? It's not. But that was always the plan. I reread Project 2025 this week and checked off all the stuff they've already actioned and looked ahead to what they plan to do next. And despite Trump's denial about having anything to do with Project 2025, because he's not to be trusted, many of the authors of this mandate for leadership now hold senior positions in Trump's cabinet as close advisors and operators of the federal government, which was also the plan. Trump claimed he'd never even read Project 2025, but in the same sentence said there was some very good stuff in it. That's the level of intellect we're dealing with, folks. He can't even lie without contradicting himself, and not just about that, but pretty much about everything. Russell Vogt, the Christian nationalist, head of the Office of Management and Budget, wrote in his chapter of Project 2025, the president would be called on for aggressive use of the vast powers of the executive branch. At the heart of the executive branch, Vogt wrote, was the Office of Management and Budget. The OMB cannot perform its role on behalf of the president effectively if it is not intimately involved in all aspects of the White House policy process or lacks knowledge of what the agencies are doing, he wrote. We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected, he said in a video. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work, because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want their funding to be shut down. We want to put them in trauma. Vogt's words, delivered at an event hosted by his think tank, Center for Renewing America, was striking. They reflected a view long espoused by Vogt that the government should be brought to heel by a sweepingly powerful executive branch. Now, the head of the Office of Management and Budget, the powerful agency in the executive branch that oversees federal agencies and administers the budget, Vogt is positioned to help Donald Trump do just that. It's as if they planned it. Center for Renewing America's work dovetails neatly with the ideology of other extreme figures in the Trump administration, such as Pete Hegseth, who has written that he believes factional political violence in the U.S. is inevitable and describes U.S. politics as a struggle of good versus evil. Similarly, Vogt's group claims that the left in the U.S. pose an existential threat to the country. And those two boys think they're the goodies. Vogt wrote, the threat of radical philosophies rooted in Marxism, such as critical race theory, is vast, real, and increasingly existential. That was a line of text in a section of the website titled Woke and Weaponized. Vogt has also openly embraced Christian nationalism, the political movement that seeks to infuse Christianity into public life and government. Let's just think about what that means. Gone is the separation of church and state. These people hate Muslims. They have banned Muslims again. And let's be honest, anybody who doesn't look like them and worships their God is also an enemy. Contrary to the views of most Americans, they are anti-abortion, anti-same-sex marriage, anti-mixed marriage, and anti-education. Instead of a full-rounded education, Learning the facts about America's checkered history and place in the world, they want to indoctrinate a Jesus-first agenda, where slavery never happened, the civil rights movement wasn't necessary, and where white Christian straight men are the breadwinners because women are best served at home, looking after the men, and relentlessly childbearing because contraception is banned along with pornography. This isn't a fantasy of theirs. It's Trump's policy. Have you read The Handmaid's Tale? A second federal judge on Friday ordered a temporary pause in Trump administration's efforts to freeze federal funding in the latest twist over the spending of trillions of dollars in grants and loans. Judge John McConnell sided with nearly 24 states that requested an emergency order preventing most federal agencies from halting funding. Another judge in Washington halted the plan earlier last week, minutes before it was set to go into effect, but her short-term order was only in place until yesterday unless she decided to extend it. Well, McConnell ordered the federal government not to pause, freeze, impede, block, cancel, or terminate funding promised to the states while the temporary restraining order was in place. But the White House press secretary said that a funding freeze is still planned in line with President Donald Trump's blitz of executive orders. The Republican president wants to increase fossil fuel production, remove protections for transgender people, and end diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. The memo, which was issued earlier last week by the OMB, had frightened states and schools and organizations that rely on trillions of dollars from Washington. Administration officials said the pause was necessary to review whether spending aligned with Trump's executive orders on issues like climate change and diversity and equity and inclusion. But 2 days later, they sent out a 2-sentence notice rescinding the original memo. A day later, Trump administration officials said programs that provide direct assistance to Americans, including Medicare, Social Security, student loans, and food stamps, would not be affected. But that did little to ease the chaos. Administration officials insisted that despite the confusion, their actions still had the intended effect by underscoring to federal agencies their obligations to abide by Trump's executive orders. And that, in turn, prompted states to request the temporary restraining order. As I've said before, the political mechanisms for halting Trump's authoritarianism are few and far between. But judges are coming through. A Rhode Island federal judge ruled that the White House violated a previous court order blocking a funding freeze. He ordered the Trump administration to restore federal program payments, warning that further non-compliance could be a crime. Public servants across federal agencies now find themselves caught between Donald Trump's executive orders and federal judges who have blocked them, at least temporarily, until the courts can more fully determine whether the president has exceeded his legal authority. They face firing by the Trump administration if they defy him, and potential legal sanctions if they don't. These officials are at the ground level of a constitutional crisis in which Trump is claiming expansive powers that test traditional limits on the president's authority and could circumnavigate the roles of Congress and the courts. As of now, the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals denied a request from Donald Trump's administration to block a lower court order halting Trump's federal funding freeze, while litigation is ongoing. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.